Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
F1 could make a return to the African continent for the first time in more than 30 years, with the sport due to announce new host cities in the coming weeks.
One more race we need, and that's going to be Africa. You know, we're in all the other continents, and why not there?
Rwanda and Morocco are among those believed to be vying for the license, but South Africa has made no secret of its ambition to bring F1 back to the country.
Lewis Hamilton, you said you had a dream to race in South Africa again. I'm standing here to tell you, we will not rest until your dream comes to a realization that you will race again in South Africa.
On this week's Next Africa podcast, we look at who's bidding to bring back Formula One to Africa and why investors and governments are so desperate to become part of the global phenomenon that is F1. I'm Jennifer Zabasajja, and this is the Next Africa podcast, bringing you one story each week from the continent, driving the future of global growth with the context only Bloomberg can provide. Joining us this week is our senior Africa reporter, that's Loni Prinsloo. Loni, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So this is a fascinating story for, I think, people who are fans of Formula One, but even those who haven't been. But maybe we just start with the phenomenon that has been Formula One over the past few years. Can you talk about how big of a business it is in 2025 and what you found in your reporting?
Formula One went from a very niche type of sport where it was like a few petrol heads, very European, to what we are seeing today in 2025, as you ask, which is basically an entertainment extravaganza. You are seeing people, 125,000 people at a time attend these races. Revenue is $3.4 billion a year. You have 1.6 billion people watching every race. Entertainment on the side, VIP lounges. You have these young drivers that have a new fan base, which is younger women.
Hi guys and girls, it's the Lando log. A few days ago we put on socials for you to send in some questions. Today is the day that I answer all of those questions.
So it's not just sort of like old guys watching the cars or small technicalities around the cars. It's really become more of an entertainment show. We've seen Brad Pitt do the new show F1. Netflix has quite a few Formula One shows running. So yeah, it went from a motor racing sort of niche event to what we are seeing today, which is a big entertainment show.
Yeah, they've really sort of capitalized on the fan base, especially with some of the shows that you mentioned. And when we think about the last time it was here in Africa, 1993, yes, which is surprising, I think, for many people. But there's serious contenders who want to bring it back. And that's really gets to the heart of your story. Can you talk about some of the people who you met and what they told you?
There's quite a few characters around trying to bring back Formula One to Africa. As you said, 1993, we're the only populated continent that does not have a race. But we have a track. We even had a world champion, Jody Scheckter, at one point.
Did not know that. A South African.
South African, yes. But now we're like 30, 40 years on. So where are we now? We have two sort of cities that people are trying to pitch for. The one is Johannesburg with the old track Kyalami that needs a few upgrades to get us to spec. The one guy that seems like a serious contender there is an entertainment sort of promoter, and he does some entertainment things like Delicious Festival on Kyalami track already. And you have the Porsche CEO there that owns the track, and so it sounds like he will basically rent the track to whoever is the winner there on the Johannesburg side. But then we have a much more, or what some people would view as a much more iconic sort of destination, which is Cape Town, recently voted as the best city in the world by Time Out magazine. You have the beautiful sort of Table Mountain and just all around sort of views for days, Robben Island, history of Nelson Mandela. So people view that as maybe an iconic sort of destination. There's two that we really went into a bit in the article. The one is a street race, and that's being done by Tilke, who's world-renowned in terms of the sort of tracks that they build. a street race might be difficult in Cape Town because it will lock up the city for quite a few weeks. But there is that proposal. And then there's a stadium outside of Cape Town that's being proposed, a new track. The guy that's doing that actually owned Kyalami in the 80s when the race was still here, when Formula One was still here. So his name is Bobby Hartsleeve. He has some US backers called Boundless Racing, and they seem very serious about what they want to achieve. And they have interesting ideas on what they want to do there, like an amphitheater, condominiums, things like that.
So, Loni, talk about maybe some of these proposals and the details. You just said condominiums. So they're looking to build an ecosystem around these tracks, is what it sounds like.
Yes, 100%. So let's start with the old track, Kyalami. As I said, from the 60s to the 90s, we had the Formula One race here. So they still have the track. The track is well maintained, but it needs some upgrades. As we said, Formula One is now a show. You need 125,000 seater. Kyalami is only 50,000 seaters. So you need to expand. That is Johannesburg. But then we have Cape Town. Cape Town is seen as the more iconic venue. Liberty has said it wants an iconic venue. I mean, you have Monaco, you have those sort of cities, recently Madrid, that has come online. So you want to sort of compete and show off what we have in Africa. So they are planning a track then outside of about 890 miles from his old track, Kyalami. They are planning a track outside of Cape Town, and with that, an ecosystem, as you said. So amphitheater to have shows in. You have condominiums where rich guys with nice cars can sort of buy a condominium and then race around on the track on the weekend if there's no sort of races.
Just a normal
planned.
Weekend for some people.
So that's the plan for the track. That's backed by Boundless Racing. And then this is the street race that is beautiful and goes around the mountain and all of that, but has its own sort of sets of challenges if you have to sort of lock up the city for a few weeks.
So all of these plans sound like they will require a lot of funds, a lot of capital in order to get things going. Clearly, people who pay attention to, the coverage that we have, it's not a great time economically for the continent, for the globe, but even for South Africa. So how would these funds be raised? Where would the capital actually come from?
So talking to the different people around this, most of the funds will be privately raised. When we spoke to, for instance, the Boundless Racing people, the attraction is the sort of yields that the returns that you can get on your investment in Cape Town versus more developed markets like Europe or so. So your returns are quite good. The government, the South African government, sports minister, he's really keen on this. He's a new sports minister and he's very keen. He's been talking to sponsors, trying to raise the money for a licensing fee. It's anything from about $20 million to about $50 million. So he's trying to raise that initial funding around just getting the licensing fee to the bidders. But there's lots to go with it, including roads. You need public links, transport. Most of the people are saying minimal direct investment from government, but you do need some investment from government.
So the government is supportive of this. They want
very
this to happen.
supportive. In fact, the minister said he would have failed in his sort of portfolio if it doesn't bring Formula One back.
That is the South African case that you just presented there. Let's take a quick break and come back and talk about some of the other bidders from the continent. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today, we're talking about hopes for Formula One to return to the continent of Africa. We have our Bloomberg senior Africa reporter here, Loni Prinsloo, who has just reported on this story for Bloomberg. So, Loni, we talked about the South African bids just before the break. If you can, share some of the other bidders from across the continent that we know who are trying to also bid for this license.
So there's been some talk about interest from Morocco. When we spoke to sources, the Morocco interest is there. It doesn't seem as far advanced as what South Africa and Rwanda is trying. So then let's talk about Rwanda. Rwanda has hosted a recent event for Formula One in Kigali. So they look very serious. Their president has said several times, they are interested in getting into the bidding for Formula One. They are said to have some Middle Eastern backers for what they would need to bring it, a new track and stuff as well. They brought in an Austrian sort of track designer to look at a track. In all reason, Rwanda looks very serious about their efforts. They have a bit of trouble currently with, they're involved in a war with the Congo. So that could play into it for them in the shorter term. No one says Africa can only have one race. Europe has several races. So we'll see how all of this plays out. Currently, the bids are eyed for 2027. More realistically, it could be actually 2028. Just because of the time it will take to, if you have a proposal that seems like it could work, the time to put in everything that you would need, you take that backwards, is about 2 years.
So then, Loni, maybe you can share what actually comes into the final decision. What is it that the FIA, what is it that they're looking for? Is it what you said, an iconic backdrop like Cape Town? Is it something where, they can build an ecosystem around it? What will be factored into the final decision?
What goes into it is a bit of sort of political will from them. They did say quite a few times that they are willing to bring the race back to Africa. But it comes with its challenges. As we said, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to come with this. You need the track. You need a 125,000-seater. You need to manage the traffic that comes with all of that. You need to manage the security that comes with all these famous drivers. And, it's just catering, public transport, having an airport 30 minutes, that's one of the requirements as well, having an airport 30 minutes from your track.
Wow.
So the list is quite extensive. I think it's more than 300 pages.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a massive list of requirements that you need. And as we know, Africa, we have some issues with limited infrastructure. Mm-hmm. But we've hosted the World Cup soccer before, so
could be possible.
There's a will, there's a way.
I think that's what many people are hoping for, at least on the government side. We've talked for a while, and I think you mentioned this. F1 has talked about coming back to the continent for a while. Lewis Hamilton is one of those who's been a big proponent of that. Actually, he pitched it to former President Nelson Mandela, and it didn't happen, right? For various reasons. Does this actually seem like it could realistically happen?
Realistically, it does look like it could potentially happen, but there's so many other interested parties. There's Thailand. That stands a good chance. I mean, and there's also limited races, only 24 races. Limited slots, lots of interest in hosting a race. South Africa has tried before, quite recently. So there was 2020. In 2023, they tried again, and there was some sort of financial issues around renting the track. So hopefully everyone has sort of gone through the snags that there is around it. And this time around, we can make quite a serious proposal and get it back, whether that's like 2027, 2028. But get it, ultimately have a race. It's a spectacular show.
Yeah.
It brings a lot of, tourists that hasn't seen many of our sites before. So, yeah.
And that's our Bloomberg senior Africa reporter, Loni Prinsloo there. Thanks so much, Loni, for joining us. And you can read Loni's coverage right now across Bloomberg platforms. Here's some of the other stories we're watching in the region this week. African countries are concerned that the U.S. may withdraw military cooperation and aid, which has helped them fight against terrorists and rebellions. U.S. military leaders and officials have expressed concerns about the potential withdrawal of aid, and some have hinted that it may not continue in its current form. And the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Utah unsealed charges against 4 citizens accused of participating in a failed coup attempt in the Democratic Republic of Congo last year. The 4 men face charges of conspiring to provide material support and resources, conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction, conspiracy to bomb places of government facilities, and conspiracy to kill or kidnap persons in a foreign country, according to the statement. And you can follow these stories across Bloomberg, including the Next Africa newsletter. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. This program was produced by Adrian Bradley. Don't forget to follow and review this show wherever you usually get your podcasts. I'm Jennifer Zabasajja. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week.